Gabe Newell is the founder of Valve, owner of Steam, perhaps the most influential individual in modern-day computer games, and the richest man in the entire video game industry, with a net worth of over $5 billion. Gabe Newell is a computer programmer and a businessman who started off his career at Microsoft in 1983. While at Microsoft, Gabe Newell was the lead producer on the very first version of Microsoft Windows. He also worked very closely with his boss, Bill Gates. And like Bill Gates, Gabe Newell also dropped out of Harvard University to follow his dream of one day owning his own software company. In 1996, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington, Gabe's co-worker at Microsoft, quit Microsoft to start their own company, Valve Corporation. So Gabe and Mike started development on the first game engine they called Gold Source. Using this new engine, Valve produced a first-person science fiction shooter titled Half-Life. Half-Life was an especially groundbreaking game when it first released. No other video game company had produced a first-person shooting game on PC that worked so well with modern mouse and keyboards at such a high quality. Although Valve produced many amazing games such as Half-Life and Left 4 Dead, what really set Valve apart from its competitors was its ability to listen and value the input and creativity of its customers. An example of this is Counter-Strike Source, which started off as a community mod created for Half-Life. Valve would go on to purchase the rights to Counter-Strike, making it into its own standalone game. Without Valve's accessibility in its early years, many of the games fans have known and loved would not exist at all. Gabe even has an email that fans and customers can use to message him directly, and reportedly, he responds to most of them. While development of games from Valve certainly made a splash in the industry, Gabe's biggest contribution to the gaming industry was Steam. On September 12, 2003, Steam was created as a way to control the patching process for their games, to fight against cheating, and to provide quicker access to any content produced by the developers. However, Steam was not seen in such a good light at the time. Many people saw Steam as a threat to PC gaming since it required a constant connection to the internet, and this was a problem in 2003 because not many people in general had broadband internet. Alongside that, Steam servers continually struggled to cope with its users' traffic, kicking people out of their already purchased games. Pairing this with slow download speeds, unintuitive interface, and frequent patching, Steam did not experience a graceful landing. The next year in 2004, Valve released Half-Life 2, the sequel to their critically acclaimed sci-fi shooter Half-Life. Half-Life 2 was only available on Steam, so to play it you had to download Steam. And Half-Life 2 was met with overwhelmingly positive reviews, and it was the top game on the Steam store for quite some time. This in and of itself was enough to launch Steam as the major online video game distributor. The next year in 2005, Steam released its first non-Valve games on the platform, Darwinia and Ragdoll Kung Fu. And while they're not the most amazing games, the release of these games set a new precedent for Steam, turning it from a simple downloading software and server browser to a real, actualized store. It's only in 2006 when Steam really begins becoming what it will be today. They introduced the elusive Steam sale.
Are you ready for a miracle?
No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. No, you can't make me do it. Can't make me do it again. I won't do it again.
Are you ready for a miracle?
I'm not ready. No, no, no.
Along with free demos and HD video. At this point, Steam has nearly 100 games available on their store, and their issue of being noticed quickly becomes a non-issue. In 2007, Valve fleshes Steam out even further. They introduced things like better search functions, Metacritic ratings for games, and filters like new releases and top sellers. These all help to make the Steam store a more useful and user-friendly store. They also add community forums, which show they value the customer's input. They also introduce miscellaneous things like voice chat, stat tracking, friends lists, and community groups. And these all help to turn Steam from a PC game program to a PC game community. By 2008, Steam has amassed over 20 million users. At this point, there are enough games that Steam has to implement a new Browse by Genre feature. This makes browsing the continually growing catalog a bit easier. The general layout of the homepage also changes. They add the Spotlight feature, which puts banners of popular games and new games on the top of the page. The image slideshow, and large advertisement banner slots. These features all create more exposure to the games, increasing Steam's profitability. They also add the Steam Cloud, which saves game data, key bindings, and user settings across multiple computers. Steam is the first of its kind to include a feature like this. 2009 was a relatively uneventful year for Steam. However, they did introduce two new dangerous categories, under $5 and under $10. These two categories attempt to frame buying games as impulse buys, enticing people to binge buy video games they don't even have the time to play in the first place. I know, right? Who would be foolish enough to do that? Anyway, when 2010 came around, Steam changed sales from a simple markdown to a percentage off label, making it easier to spot good deals. They also added several games for the Mac, expanding Steam beyond the Windows PC market. 2011 was a huge year for Steam. Firstly, they introduced their first Steam Summer Sale.
Are you ready for a miracle?
These site-wide sales would become synonymous with Steam, since the other major game distributors such as Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft did not have the means and/or the desire to hold such events. At the time, Steam was also facing a too many games conundrum. To combat this, they created a new recommended widget, which uses AI to learn what games a user would be most interested in. Alongside this, long-term Valve fans and modders rejoiced to see the newly added Steam Workshop feature, which allows users to create and share user-created content directly through Steam. Yet another feature Steam pioneered. In 2012, Steam introduced the new Steam Greenlight initiative. Although Steam's Greenlight did not pan out the way they anticipated, it was a massively innovative program that led to many relatively unknown games to make it onto the store page. For a mere $100 licensing fee, any developer, young or old, new or experienced, could submit as many games as they wanted to. The community would then vote on the games to determine if they should be sold on Steam. However, too many low-quality games would make it through Greenlight, flooding the market. In addition, some game makers would bribe users with free copies of the game or in-game items to sway their votes. This would eventually lead to Steam ending the Greenlight initiative in 2017. 2012 also brought the Steam Marketplace, a feature that allows players to trade in-game items for real-world money. This feature would boost games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive massively. However, the marketplace also didn't pan out like they had hoped, and led to scammers, online gambling, and dramatic market inflation. But these problems have been largely taken care of with newly introduced trading limitations. In 2013, Valve sets its eyes on the console-dominated living room. In preparation for SteamOS, a Linux-based operating system, Steam introduces Linux support and gives it its own tab. Big Picture Mode is also released. Big Picture Mode allows Steam to be controlled entirely with a controller, and its interface is much more suitable for couch gaming. While on their conquest to enter the console market, they also introduced Family Sharing, which allows users to share their Steam library with others easily. Alongside this is the arrival of user-made reviews and an RPG-style leveling system for profiles. By 2014, Linux support has dropped since SteamOS has largely flopped. However, 2014 also sees the release of in-home streaming. In-home streaming is the process of streaming games from a more powerful PC to a more lower-powered PC, like a laptop, over the internet. Provided they have a strong enough internet connection, users can now transform their laptops or tablets into high-end gaming PCs for couch gaming. The Discovery update came out in late 2014, the final major update to the Steam store up to this point. The front page is covered in personalized recommendations, and Steam's Discovery queue is right on the front. In 2015, they released the Steam Controller, Steam Link, and Steam Machines, all in an attempt to further penetrate the console market. Later in 2016, Steam introduces support for VR games, as well as their own headset, the Valve Index. It's 2021, and Steam looks more or less the same as it did in late 2014. Gabe Newell, still the current owner of Steam and CEO of Valve, has introduced so many innovative ideas into the PC gaming community, such as listening to users to improve or to create products, Steam as the first massive PC gaming distributor, the Steam Cloud as the first cloud-based service for gaming, in-home streaming, and the Steam Workshop and Marketplace. Gabe has undoubtedly changed PC gaming for the better, even if the Steam Marketplace is a bit messy right now. And while I was making this video, I actually discovered that in place of their Greenlight initiative, they created a system called Steam Direct, which completely gets rid of any boundaries for developers to create games. Whether that's indicative of the current state of Steam, I'm unsure. So that concludes my presentation, but I don't want to add any fluff to this video, so I'm just going to play a 5-minute video of a quick overview of Steam, made by a much better speaker than I. But yeah, that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions or want to add anything, please feel free to leave it in the replies. Thank you.
Steam may have had humble beginnings as that program that for some reason even retail copies of Half-Life 2 had to have installed alongside. But it has since grown into the primary way that people purchase games for their PCs, with Steam sales now accounting for roughly 50 to 75% of the total PC gaming market. Such a huge chunk that some have argued that Steam's virtual monopoly on game distribution could stifle competitive innovation. But no matter how you feel about it, there is no denying that Valve has refined Steam into a powerful platform with a lot to offer. Gabe, Newell, and Valve created Steam more or less out of necessity when they noticed that they would be inundated with problems every time they needed to update one or more of their online games. By creating a platform with the ability to automatically update games, Valve minimized the downtime that the gamers would experience so that they could keep playing without having to worry about navigating to the developer's website, to download the latest patch, to blah, 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 hopefully it's up this time. However, despite being the norm today, Valve certainly made at least a few gamers steaming mad by imposing online authentication and DRM requirements to play games, especially since Steam was still pretty buggy around the time that Half-Life 2 was released in 2004, often buckling under the stress of heavy traffic and crashing games as a result. But much like John Stamos, Steam just got better with age, and after they smoothed out their client-server networking architecture, Valve started making agreements with third-party publishers to diversify Steam's game catalog beyond its own titles. And as more and more publishers began adopting the digital distribution model, the success and profitability of Steam grew, prompting Valve to roll out a host of new features for the platform, like cloud storage for you to save your online profile, achievement lists to reward your gaming, instant messaging so you could easily keep in contact with your gaming friends, and perhaps most notably, the addition of community-based networking groups. I mean, they turned it into a freaking social network. Recognizing the importance of its community, Valve launched Steam Greenlight in 2012 as a way for users to help choose which games were added to the service. With Greenlight, developers are able to submit information about their projects, including early demos, so users could pledge their support for the games that they want to see made available on Steam. Sort of like your 6th grade science fair, only the winners get their projects published on Steam instead of some crappy school newsletter. However, for the steps that Greenlight seemed to be making in the right direction, there were certainly some steps backwards, and some developers became notorious for pandering to the community by offering free copies of the game upon release in exchange for thumbs up, effectively gaming the system. Valve has committed to replace Greenlight with something else that's entirely user-driven, but given that they've never been particularly speedy about releases, it still feels like we could be waiting for that for some time. So then what else is in store for the future of Steam? Well, thanks to a partnership with HTC, Valve plans on getting into VR in a big way. Recently, the HTC Vive, the first Steam VR headset, was shown off with a handful of demos, including a level based on Portal's Aperture Science Lab. There's also a huge number of Steam games that already have the necessary code to work with the other VR headsets like the Oculus Rift, and Valve has said they'll be releasing an open source API so that developers can make their games and other applications compatible with Steam VR. And given that Valve tends to couple new technology releases with flagship game releases, maybe we can hope that the Vive will herald the coming of the long-awaited, but never confirmed, not even confirmed they were even really working on it, Half-Life 3. Probably not, but you can go ahead and get your hopes up anyway.